Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to What's Up With That, the show that brings you interesting people, places, cultures, and subcultures here in the South Bay, the San Francisco Bay Area, and beyond. And tonight, what's up with ex-cons? What's up with convicts? And what's being done to help people in the prisons to gain skills? Well, as you know, the prison population in America continues to grow every day. Some people call it justice, others just don't understand. Well, the real focus is what's being provided for prisoners to help them gain the skills needed to survive on the outside. Well, tonight we have a very interesting show. Joining me are three ladies who work at Elmwood Correctional Center. Please welcome to the show Julie Jacobs. She is a supervising coordinator for the Inmate Literacy Project. Judy Chavez, program coordinator for Correctional Center for Women. And Ellen Lobel. Aha, I got that one. Family literacy instructor. Hey, what's up with that? How you doing? Hey, you know, going into prisons or jails is really a noble thing, and I think a lot of people are really frightened of the whole concept of actually going into a jail. Is there a typical person that you meet in your program? Is there a certain type of person that fits the description of a potential criminal or a convict?
No, not really. They're just like your next door neighbor when you get in.
They could be somebody who's working right beside you.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say is the most common offense that people are in jail for?
Substance abuse.
Substance abuse. And so and is it rising? Do you see like an incredible increase in this situation?
Substance abuse, yes, substance abuse has always been a problem, but I think that as we increase the war on drugs, we're declaring war on our own people, we'll throw them in jail.
Well, the unfortunate problem when you talk about the Just Say No campaign is that we know it doesn't work. It hasn't worked.
No, and we do have a lot of programs in jail for substance abuse to help people while they're in jail learn how to deal with their substance abuse problem. But with substance abuse, you have everything that's connected to substance abuse, such as robberies, armed robberies, domestic violence.
Right.
All those things are connected with substance abuse.
And this is because they need the money to buy drugs? Is that?
And it alters their personalities. When they're in jail and they're no longer on drugs, their real personalities come out. And we see just average, nice people.
So you see average, nice people, and do you see people who are under the influence of substances?
Usually by the time we see them, because we're in a program, we run a program, by the time we see them, they're clean. They've already been in jail for sometimes at least over 72 hours. And
right.
Usually they've already been there for 2 or 3 weeks by the time that we see them.
Is there a problem with drugs in jails? Do they get them inside the...
As far as we know, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Occasionally, but they usually find them immediately.
Well, I know in Elmwood there was, like last year, a big deal about smoking.
No.
And something about the Nuestra
Smoking
Familia.
cigarettes.
Right. It's not,
Right.
well, yeah.
Smoking.
I don't know. I guess I have to clarify that.
Yeah.
But I guess, you know, I read the story about a lady who works for, I think it was Nuestra Familia, which is a gang, a prison gang, and her entire income was made by attaching rocks to cartons of cigarettes and checking them over the fence. Somewhere in Elmwood, she had an accomplice or something, and, you know, this was happening, so I would think that it's certainly possible.
Well, smoking is now, the way they ended that was smoking is now legal inside the jails as of last January 1997. So that kind of put her out of business.
When you talk to your particular clients, I don't know how you would want to phrase it, what kind of reactions do you get from them about what they're going through? Does society see them as, how do you think they see society viewing them?
Oh boy, I don't know. Our focus on them is to ask them about their reading skills. That's how we first come in contact with them. So how they see society, a lot of times it is us and them, they see themselves as different, but the people that we work with see themselves also as different because they have low-level reading skills.
Right. And does that mean low self-esteem? Is it
yes,
all,
everything that goes
it's all
with that.
intertwined? And what happened there? Was there somewhere along the way that, did the California school system fail them? Did somebody not sit down and instruct them correctly? Or, I mean, I would think that you'd have to find a core problem to see.
There are a lot of different reasons. Some of them tell us that they move very frequently when they're children. Their parents moved around and they moved from school to school, and they just never, they would get behind and they never got caught up, but they did get passed along. Because we do have people that come to our program who have high school diplomas, but still read far, far below the ninth grade level. That we take people from the ninth grade level below that into our program, and we frequently have them that come in with third, second grade level reading, even though they have a high school diploma.
Yeah. So you work inside the jail every day, is that correct? Okay, what would you say is the most incorrect assumption that society makes about a convict or an ex-con? What is the number one thing that...
Well, I would say that, if you disagree, I would say that the incorrect assumption is that they're really different.
Yeah.
Even though some of them may have tattoos up their arms and down their arms and all over their chest, they're still people.
Right.
And most of them, as I said, are there for substance abuse. And that could be a whole myriad of reasons why they abuse substances. I don't have the statistics. I think the paper had Mercury News not too long ago had an article about abuse, both physical and sexual abuse of men and women.
Well, didn't somebody die in county jail or something? Someone put a sack over their head or something like that? And
that we were never ever connected with that, and so I don't know. All I know is from that is what I read in the paper. But when people come into a jail, they could be very angry, but they can be very angry on the outside too. So, to say that someone in jail is very different than the guy you see walking down the street, I think it's an incorrect assumption to say that just because they've been in jail, they're different. They aren't. They're people.
And unfortunately, in our society, it's always what we can say about somebody else to make ourselves better or appear better.
A put down.
And a convict or an ex-con is, a number one very easy target. I believe when we were talking earlier, you said something about, or you'd said, it could be anybody. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be, that's not how society sees them, though. You understand that. And you can understand how difficult it would be to go into, find a job, and they say, well, where have you been the last 2 years?
It is very difficult.
People in our county jails, though, very often, they don't, their families don't know, their children don't know that they're there. Their wives, usually spouses, do, but their employers don't know. They take a leave of absence. If they've been arrested for something and they know they're probably going to be there for a couple of months, they'll take a leave of absence from work.
All right, well, within the jail, you provide a very unique service. And let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
It is a literacy. Why don't you go ahead and explain a little bit about what you do in the jail?
Well, I'm the supervising coordinator for the Inmate Literacy Project. We provide tutors for inmates who need help improving their reading and writing skills or improving their literacy skills. These are volunteers from the community. We train them. They volunteer to come into the jails to help people learn how to fill out a job application, to learn how to improve their math skills as well as reading.
What percentage of the people incarcerated in this area are below reading level, below average?
We don't have any hard statistics for you, but on the average, about every 10 people that we assess, I would say probably 3 to 4 to 5 are below a 9th grade level.
And do you think, do you feel maybe that that's a reason why they're in the predicament that they are?
Very often.
Yeah.
We feel that it is.
Yeah, I'm sure.
They can't get jobs in the Silicon Valley with that kind of educational
No,
level.
especially in this competitive valley, it's be impossible.
And to be honest, sometimes they live in neighborhoods where they can see that someone who deals drugs makes a lot of money. And they don't want to work down at the Burger King for minimum wage when somebody right next to them asks them to make a delivery for them, and they make quite a bit more money than that. And when they get started when they're kids.
Right.
And once they're in your neighborhood and there's something that you don't get out of that easily, it's pretty hard to get away from that. So as a result, we find some very young people in jail. We have them 18, 19 years old that are they're really just kids.
They have their birthday at juvenile hall and they're then shipped to Elmwood. Yeah.
Oh, what a bummer. You know, you've said something that struck me when you were talking about this kind of feeling, you know, with the drugs and the stuff. I know in the rap culture, a lot of the music is very much sort of, I guess the best way to say it is without, there's no sense of an extension of life. Do you know what I mean? And Tupac, of course, was the great example because he predicted the year he would die. He didn't see himself as ever living to the age of 30. And I think that's a big thing here. It's a big thing here, this hopelessness that lives inside. Now, Ellen, you run an interesting program as well. And why don't you talk a little bit about what you do?
Okay. I teach a class on the men's side and on the women's side out at Elmwood in the Correctional Center for Women. And it's a family literacy class, and it was started at San Quentin. And we have a wonderful curriculum, and we use children's books to talk about parenting issues. And for example, today on the men's side, we wrote a book called Daddy, Daddy, Be There. And it really touched all the men in the class because they feel that they'd love to be home helping their kids out, but they're stuck at Elmwood and feeling a little bit powerless and not really sure what will happen when they get out.
Right.
So, or maybe they've been in several times, and then this book is really poignant because it tells them, you know, how much their kids really need them.
Right.
And we have similar
books. Well, it
books.
must be devastating for a child to not have a father, especially at a young age, and really, like you said, not know where they are, or is this like a big cover-up or something? They're just told. What are they told? You know, daddy's out to sea or something?
Yeah, they do have different stories. Some of the women tell their kids that they're away on a job and that they're going to school or they're visiting a relative, something like that.
But Ellen's class teaches the inmates to be honest and tell their children where they are, that they made a mistake. She knows more about the lesson than I do.
Yeah, we have, one of the last lessons is to talk about incarceration and reconnection with your kids, and we use a couple of great books. One of them is called The House That Crack Built, and you'd probably only want to use that with an older kid because it's very explicit and some of the pictures are just really horrifying. And then another one describes what it's like when Dad goes off to prison.
The House That Crack Built. Yeah, that's pretty, yeah, that's right to the point there.
Yeah, that wasn't originally in the curriculum, but we added it because we thought it was very important.
Well, I think it's important to do that. I think you have to do something that they can understand, you know. Well, we talked a little bit about the way society views the convict, the person both incarcerated and the one out. And we have a video clip that we're going to look at, and this is a video clip, a Hollywood media video clip, and this is where a lot of these stereotypes come from. And we're just going to look at it, and I want you to tell me after you look at it, is this anything like the place you work at? So let's take a look at this video clip right now.
Open it up. No. Come on, listen. Hey, I ain't doing nothing. Do your own time, man. That's what I've been trying to teach you. Do your own time.
Fred, with you. Dead? That's it. Your daddy, you don't even know it. You've been in here so long, man, you're dead and you don't even know it.
You have to understand that most films and television shows that deal with jails, even with NYPD Blue, which is supposed to be, you know, a little higher quality than some stuff, they still deal with that stuff. You're there every day. What's it like?
Well, there aren't any bars anymore. It's windows, great big windows and open dorms. And the individual cells are two-man cells, usually. And they're allowed to come out, for at least 6 hours a day in most of them. And we walk into the dorms. We're allowed to go in just about all the dorms.
Mm-hmm.
And the window, there's an observation window where a correctional officer can watch at all times whenever we do that. And we usually stay right by the front door.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally have never felt threatened at any time.
So you've never ever come across any kind of problem?
Never.
We're inside, when Judy's talking about us, when we're inside a dorm, we're inside with 60 to 70 men.
Mm-hmm.
Who are not locked up. They're in a large day area.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't have cells anymore.
I mean, I hate to tell you, but I think most women, if you were going to say that you were going to be locked, not locked, but placed in a room with,
we're locked in, yes.
Locked in with 70 inmates, I don't think they'd be looking at what we just saw and saying, oh my God, you know? Nothing like that at all.
Never.
No.
As a matter of fact, they run and get me a chair, and they run and get me anything I want, and they turn the television down. They don't swear. They never swear. And if they do, they apologize.
We're treated with the utmost respect.
Very respectful toward us.
Well, that's good, because I think that, you know, dispelling a lot of myths about this stuff. But then there's consequences, right? There's big consequences for behavior, and as well as when you get out. When you're an ex-con, you're in probation and all this stuff, and which brings me to my next question: how many repeat offenders do you see?
Well, it's hard to say as far as a repeat offender, because most of the time what we see, if someone comes back, they violated a probation. If someone comes back 3 or 4 years later, that might be a repeat offender, means that they were arrested for an entirely new charge. But most of the time what we see in a county jail is someone is what we call rolled up, or they're rolled back into jail because they didn't pass a test, a drug test.
Okay.
And so they're sent back because that violates their probation. And so they're sent back to a county jail to finish their sentence. You know, or if they had been sentenced to a state prison, they will stay at Elmwood until it's decided where they're going to go, and then they may go to a state prison to finish their sentence. But repeat offenders, that's hard to say, because actually we don't see that many repeat offenders.
No.
That would be someone who, like I said, we would see maybe every 2 or 3 years, and it doesn't happen that often.
Okay, well, we had actually, believe it or not, a very difficult time finding somebody to come on the show who was who's an ex-con for several reasons. Probably a lot we've already discussed, family issues and stuff like that. There was another issue where we were going to have an ex-correctional officer on, and that was a big turnoff for a couple of them. They just didn't want to come on the show for whatever reason. So we have a video clip of a person who did some time, and we're going to look at that video clip right now, and we can comment on what she's saying. So let's take a look at that right now. So what do you think of your experience in jail? What's jail like?
It's a horrible life. It's the worst I've ever experienced in my whole life, and I hope I never go back there again.
I mean, we hear a lot of times a lot of really strange things happen in jails, that they're really inhumane. What are some of the things that you saw that you remember?
I've seen them treating women really bad. have barely any clothes on, fighting, and the people that were ugly, they treat us all like we were trash, pretty much. And
well, the scary part is society sometimes looks at the convict or the criminal as that way, and that's a big problem. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, yeah, I've gotten a lot of that myself. And when I was there, I was treated the same way. We're all treated the same way, and I think we did something wrong, and we paid for it by living the awful life in there.
Is there abuse inside the jails?
Yes, there's a lot of abuse. There's a lot. I've seen so much that I can't even tell you.
Pretty awful stuff.
It's pretty bad, yeah.
Well, I guess the open question is then, why do we have so many repeat offenders?
Well, I'm not, and I will never be. I'm going to try my best to remain, not have to go back there.
Do you think this?
They go back because I don't know, they like to do it, or they keep on getting in trouble. They don't care for their lives anymore.
Well, it's a good thing that you're keeping out. Thank you very much for coming. I know it's been difficult, and we'll be going right back to the studio right now. There were some issues of, feeling like possibly her own person had been violated and stuff like that. But she talks a lot about, something that might be a little bit more maximum than Elmwood. And you've said that you've been to some of the state prisons?
On a tour. Because we go in as civilians.
How do they match up to Elmwood? I mean, what we saw earlier, was that more like what you might expect?
At San Quentin and Folsom, there are 2 people to 1 cell with bars, and the cells are smaller than the ones we saw on the screen earlier.
And that would seem like that would breed some serious discontent in a situation like that.
Probably does, but we don't work in a prison.
The worst thing about jails and prisons is the boredom.
The boredom?
Yes. That's so routine. Everything is exactly the same all the time. And if it weren't for television, I think that they'd really lose their minds.
And our programs.
Right.
And our programs.
And there's a lot of different programs that you had mentioned before.
Besides what we do.
And what are some of the programs that are provided in the jails here in Santa Clara?
They're provided by some independent contractors, but the largest contractor is Milpitas Adult Ed. They provide teachers for vocational classes, welding, carpentry. They also provide teachers for substance abuse, conflict resolution, parenting, domestic violence, anger management, GED, high school. There is no other education higher than high school. If someone wants to work on they have almost enough units to graduate. While they're there, they can do independent study with the teacher helping them to get a high school diploma. But it stops there.
Right.
But there's a computer lab. There are quite a few opportunities for them to improve themselves.
The thing that just gets me, I just don't understand still with all of this is, they have a lot of opportunities and a lot of this and that, and yet they do return as substance abusers. It doesn't seem to me like statistically, and from what we picked up in the net and stuff like that, I don't know so much about literacy. Hopefully, they're reading. I mean, that's the most vital thing, but it's this addiction problem. And it's, there's so many cases where the convict gets out and, 3 or 4 days later he's picked up in the liquor store or something like that. How do we break this cycle? What's the solution to it all? What's the big answer? I mean, I think you're doing
clearly we don't have it, but we have some ideas. If we could ever narrow something down, it's just too complex as to why someone abuses substances. Again, like I mentioned earlier, it could be sexual abuse, could be physical abuse when they were children, could be frustration over not being able to read or write or be able to get a good job. There's a myriad of reasons of why someone might abuse substances. I mean, just think about it.
And or then commit crimes.
If they abuse the substances enough, then they get caught and they go to jail. especially if it's an illegal substance. So, but there could be a million reasons why someone would abuse a substance. So I don't think we can ever really narrow that down. All we can do, I think, is help people who do become addicted by giving them substance abuse programs, trying to understand their addiction, the 12-step programs, the recovery house programs, and help them with their literacy skills.
So with your literary skills, you mentioned also to me that there was something going on between the prisoners themselves, and that was I guess a mentoring program. Explain a little bit of how that goes.
Well, that's our peer tutor program. They volunteer. I go into the dorms. They get to know me, and they find out that we have this program in which we train them to teach each other. And they go through the 15-hour training, and then they choose who they want to work with. They find somebody who needs help, and they tell us what kind of materials they need. And if we feel that the person they have found has skills that are very low, we do an assessment ourselves. And we can even find a community tutor for those people, but the peer tutor stays with them. And for instance, I had one peer tutor who started with a woman who could not read at all. And by the time she left, the woman who couldn't read at the beginning was reading at the 2nd grade level, and it was mostly through the help of this other inmate.
I think there's a lot of people that want to help, and thank God that you're there providing the services that you do. And that's all the time we have for What's Up With That. I'd like to thank Julie, Judy, and Ellen for coming on the show.
You're welcome.
You're doing a noble job. And to our viewing audience, congratulations to What's Up With That for being a finalist in the National Video competition. You go. Great cast, great crew. And if you're walking down the street and you see something interesting and you wonder to yourself, hey, what's up with that? Well, tune into our show, What's Up With That, and maybe you'll find exactly what you're looking for. We'll see you next week on What's Up With That. Good night, everybody.